In the Situation Room. Fresh trouble brewing on Capitol Hill right now for the Attorney General Eric Holder. Republican sources telling CNN the House Judiciary Committee is investigating whether he lied to lawmakers under oath. Our chief congressional correspondent, Dana Bash, is here in the Situation Room with details. House Republicans, they are moving forward on this. They're not holding back at all.
That's right. It's the first day of summer, unofficially, and it's sort of like welcome to the summer of your first summer of your second term, Mr. President. They are really pursuing on a lot of fronts. Let's start with Eric Holder, the Attorney General. What they're looking at is whether or not he may have lied to Congress. And they're pointing to testimony 2 weeks ago before the House Judiciary Committee when Holder said he's never been involved in potential prosecution of the press. Now, ironically, Holder was responding to a Democrat who was lobbying him a softball question. Watch this.
We need to protect the ability of the press to engage in its First Amendment responsibilities.
I would say this, with regard to the potential prosecution of the press for the disclosure of material, that is not something that I've ever been involved in, heard of, or would think would be a wise policy.
Now, the reason Republicans are looking into whether that statement was misleading is because it turns out Holder actually had approved a warrant for Fox News reporter James Rosen's private emails. And that warrant said that there was probable cause Rosen had broken the law, which could mean potential prosecution. Now, legally, there are lots of shades of gray here on both sides. But of course, politically, especially, Wolf, as you know, when it comes to Eric Holder, Republicans have disdain for him. So they pounced on the ability to try to go after him, particularly on something as dire, potentially, as lying to Congress.
And another House committee, the Government Oversight Committee, Darrell Iss's committee, they're moving forward on a separate front as far as the Benghazi attack is concerned.
And it's right. And he used one of the sharpest tools he has, and that is the power of subpoena. He sent a subpoena to the State Department today in order to try to get emails from some of Hillary Clinton's top advisors. You see them there with regard to those infamous Benghazi talking points. Now, the administration, you remember, just recently turned over 100 pages of internal emails. But what Issa says is he wants more because those raised even more questions, especially about the involvement, Wolf, of some of those top Hillary Clinton aides. Of course, the aides of somebody who may run for president in 2016.
Here's a political question, because I know a lot of people are asking this question. The polls so far show that none of these controversies really has had much of an impact politically as far as the president's job approval numbers are concerned. So are Republicans responding to what the polls are showing?
You know, I talked to several Republican sources, senior Republican sources in the House today about that, asking, why are you guys still pursuing this so heavily when it looks like it's not penetrating at all? The answer was, they say it's just been a few weeks since this has really bubbled over. They think that there could be time, especially if they do get something salacious or even worse from their perspective. But it's very interesting. Republicans admit, Wolf, that they're walking a fine line. They have tremendous pressure from the Republican base to use their majority in the House for oversight of the Obama administration. But they also remember, and you remember very well, the last time Republicans investigated a second-term Democratic President, Bill Clinton, they went too far and it didn't go very well. So that's why the Speaker and other top Republicans, I'm told, in private, are very clear with the chairman, with the rank and file, stick with the facts, don't get too heated in the rhetoric. The other thing that I think is really fascinating is that this is the packet that they sent home with members of Congress for the Republicans for recess. So many issues on here, mostly dealing with the economy. Oversight is the very end. They still understand that jobs and the economy are what people are going to vote on.
That's issue number one and always will be. Thanks very much for that. All right, Dana, good reporting.
Thanks.
We're going to get a little bit more on this controversy involving the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder. As we said, he's being investigated by the House Judiciary Committee for possible, repeat, possible perjury. This is an investigation that could go on for a while. Daniel Kleidman is the national political correspondent for Newsweek and the Daily Beast. He has an excellent article that just came out about Eric Holder, which I read. Dan, thanks very much for coming in. What's your reaction to this investigation now that he may have committed perjury, that he lied under oath?
Well, I think this would be an almost impossible case to make. You know, the issue here is, did Eric Holder sign on to the prosecution of a reporter? He didn't. What he did was sign on to a pretty hard-nosed tactic, legal tactic, to try to get a search warrant approved That's very far from. There was never any intent of actually prosecuting James Rosen.
Even though they use the words aiding or abetting, or they use some other technical terms, co-conspirator,
that's right,
to make it sound like James Rosen was being investigated for espionage.
That's right. But at the end of the day, what Eric Holder said was, I would not support and have not been involved in the prosecution of journalists. That was never the intent here. The intent was to get this search warrant approved by a judge. Sometimes prosecutors say things as legal tactics. I think that's what was going on here.
What came across in the article that you wrote, very good article, was that Holder, though, himself would acknowledge that politically he was sort of tone deaf as far as the potential fallout from these actions going after the news media.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there are a lot of reasons that the Justice Department officials throw out as to why this was approved by the Attorney General. One is that the Attorney General and the Justice Department was under enormous pressure from both within the administration, from the intelligence community, but also from Congress to crack down on national security leaks. But at the end of the day, I think it really was this sort of cultural factor that prosecutors are trained to cast a wide net, get as much evidence as they possibly can, so that at the end they can sustain a conviction in court. And Eric Holder is a lifelong prosecutor, and I think to some extent, looking back on this, he probably thinks that he had that same kind of tunnel vision that prosecutors all the way down the line who are in court every day have, and that may have influenced him, may have colored his views of this case.
He had an exchange with a reporter today on your article on the Daily Beast. I'll play it right now. Listen to this.
Yeah, we're going to be working with you guys. We're going to have a real frank, good conversation about this, and I think we're going to make some changes. We're not satisfied with where we are.
Is it right that you have regrets? Was that a right term that we saw in Daily Beast?
I'm not satisfied. Not satisfied.
Okay.
Are you going to have meetings this week?
I hope so.
Meetings with news media executives because the president has charged him with coming up with a new plan, if you will. He acknowledges, based on what that exchange, your article is right, he does have regrets. And I'm sort of surprised because he's not a newcomer to the world of politics. He was the deputy attorney general during the Clinton administration. I got to know him during that time. He's a pretty sophisticated, hard-nosed political guy, in addition to being a prosecutor and the attorney general of the United States.
Yeah, and I think he probably would say that in this particular case, his political antenna was not sharp enough. And, it's not politics in the kind of crude sense. It's in the larger sense that you have to understand when you're prosecuting cases, when you're investigating people, that there are larger implications, there are larger policy questions that you have to consider. And one of those is, you have to find that balance between cracking down on leaks and national security leaks, which the administration and others take very seriously, and what that does in terms of the free flow of information in a democracy. And I think his view is he didn't strike that balance properly, which is why he's now going back to look at these guidelines and see how they might be able to avoid these kinds of problems in the future.
If he had a do-over, I'm sure he'd be happy to do it a little bit different.
I think he plays a little golf. I think it would be a mulligan.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much for that, Dan Kleidman of the Daily Beast.